It may be premature to rejoice over the conclusion of the Young One essay allegations, as this film discusses a case that exemplifies, due to a lack of evidence and the victim's silence, the Collierville Police Department recently closed Pete's case. The Lamb sisters Joni and Rachel, as well as Daystar TV, responded with positive social media posts. Daystar claimed this as evidence of Pete's innocence and a victory for him. Is Pete truly innocent, though? Is it too soon to have this party? It might be risky. Pete is a close relative of Jonathan and Susie Lamb's, and they claim he abused their 5-year-old daughter. They further claim that Daystar Television Network co-founder Joni Lamb, the child's grandmother, covered up the molestation in order to prevent a thorough investigation into Pete's case. The fact that Jonathan and Susie claim their daughter hasn't discussed the sex since meeting with her grandma Joni alone is even more disturbing. Is Joni Lamb responsible for the child's silence because she scared or tricked him? Something very powerful was just posted on X by Susie Lamb, and it should be very concerning to the Lamb family and Daystar. The author said 5e slowly but surely grow up, and one day when they are 20 or 21 years old, they remember everything, they speak up, and things are made right. These courageous young women inspire me. Tears of joy and sorrow well up in my eyes. May God's love and support be with you. In this video, I'll demonstrate what Susie Lamb means by examining multiple instances where religious leaders were caught red-handed when children were able to speak, despite thinking they were out of trouble when they were young. A celebration isn't necessary for Pete, Joni, and Rachel Lamb at the moment. Justice is rarely denied to Young One in South Africa, despite their history of receiving it late. Here are a few real-life examples to illustrate this trend. Despite allegations of child sexual abuse dating back to the 1980s, Robert Morris, the pastor of Gateway Church and a former spiritual advisor to President Trump, was not charged with the crimes until 2025, a full 4 decades later. The victim, Cindy Cleeleser, detailed a 4-year period of abuse that began when she was 12 years old. Morris resigned, and since she did not inform anyone until 2024, was subsequently charged with 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. Tom Casey Jr. was indicted on 19 counts of rape and 11 counts of gross intimate imposition in 2025. He served as chief media officer before becoming the son of Faith Life Church leaders. The victims of the alleged abuse occurred between the years 2002 and 2011, according to these claims. According to some survivors, the abuse began when they were as young as 5 years old. Also, individuals who attempted to expose wrongdoing were informed they couldn't speak up due to non-disclosure agreements and allegations of cover-ups. International House of Prayer IHOP KC director Mike Bickle was the target of accusations that did not surface until 2023. The allegations dated back many years. A different report from 2025 detailed the alleged ways in which Bickle concealed and sexually assaulted 17 victims. A number of things are being said, including rape and spiritual abuse. Supposedly, members of the group were carefree for a long time due to a culture of adoring Bickle. After 2 teenage girls accused Southern Baptist priest Darrell Gilliard of having sexual relations with him while he was a pastor, a guilty verdict was handed down in 2009. This was not an isolated incident, though. The Southern Baptist Convention's executive committee was aware that 44 women had come forward with claims that Gilliard had touched them inappropriately, dating back to the early 1990s. Still, he was able to travel between churches thanks to the support of famous people. The allegations against Dr. Michael Brown, a prominent figure in the Messianic Jewish movement, of sexual misconduct did not receive any attention until 2025, despite being made public in the early 2000s. According to an unbiased assessment, he engaged in inappropriate sexual relations with multiple women. Despite Brown's emotional admissions of making mistakes and having an affair, the full scope of the accusations did not become public knowledge for decades. Jim Bakker's Morningside Church pastor Joe Campbell allegedly groped 5 women in the 1970s when they were young. Several Southern and Midwestern Assemblies of God (AOG) churches were the sites of the abuse. In 1987, the PTL ministry of televangelist Jim Bakker was closed due to allegations of sexual misconduct and financial fraud. Campbell is associated with Bakker. This network has a checkered past, as Bakker's dismissal from AOG for comparable reasons demonstrates. Officials were informed about Campbell on multiple occasions, but he evaded prosecution due to systemic flaws and the passage of time since the 1980s. However, justice is at last being served as his victims are now speaking out. When religious groups celebrate the conclusion of an investigation or the dismissal of abuse claims, it is important to understand what they typically mean. Even after a person's guilt has been established beyond a reasonable doubt, the case is typically not closed. On the contrary, they remain closed because the victim, particularly a young child, lacks the vocabulary to articulate their emotions. There is no longer a time limit. Over the years, evidence has gotten lost. Institutional power has been utilized to prevent accusations from being heard, or the victim lacks the mental capacity to endure a lengthy legal process. When children are involved, this becomes critically important. A child's cognitive development, language abilities, and emotional maturity are simply not yet at a level where they can have an appropriate conversation about complex trauma. Their confusion stems from a lack of understanding, the possibility of being silenced due to fear or deception, and the scarcity of trustworthy adults willing to hear them out. Eventually, these children are able to stand on their own 2 feet, free from the clutches of those who wronged them and the institutions that let them down. And ultimately, a lot of people discover their voice. That's why, when dealing with cases involving minors, one should very much take the closure of a case with a grain of salt. Things that appear closed today may simply be sleeping, as we witnessed with Robert Morris, Tom Casey, and countless others. All it takes is for the child to grow up and become an adult before they can finally share their story. The average duration between admission and action for childhood SA is approximately 20 years, according to repeatedly conducted research. It's not due to people being untruthful, because stress significantly alters memory function and the accuracy with which people can recount past events. This is the case. Looking at cases from the past reveals this pattern time and time again. Although initial investigations may not uncover sufficient evidence, cases may resurface years later when multiple victims come forward in concert. Some victims grow up and are able to support themselves, while others get therapy to help them cope with what happened to them, and yet others find it more acceptable to speak out due to societal shifts. What appears to be success today could prove to be their undoing tomorrow, as history has repeatedly demonstrated. Out of all the cases we've examined, one pattern stands out. It took over 40 years for Robert Morris to face charges of abuse, over 14 years for multiple victims to come forward, decades for allegations against Mike Bickle to become public, years for Daryl Gilliard to be convicted, nearly 20 years for an investigation into allegations against Dr. Michael Brown to commence, etc. These occurrences are not unusual. They represent the standard when it comes to the abuse of children. The issue is not whether or not young victims will come forward, but when. Know this: religious groups currently facing accusations, burying the voices of victims with non-disclosure agreements, or reveling in the sudden dropping of charges does not erase the truth. It does little more than postpone the inevitable. When abused youth reach adulthood, they often find that the very institutions that were meant to shield them from harm crumble under the weight of their newfound independence, voice, and community. The cause of an organization's demise turns out to be something that appeared to be a closed case. In order for religious organizations to make progress, they must be transparent, accountable, and genuinely concerned for the victims. It would be premature for them to rejoice just because the accusations appear to be going away. The children you meet today will grow up to be adults, so pay attention to what they have to say. Your discussion of this difficult but vital topic is much appreciated. If you want to see more videos like this one, which tackle serious societal issues, then you should subscribe and share it.